What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So lately I've been making a lot of these videos. Most of my videos have basically talked about Xbox and the way they've positioned themselves in the market. I think it's actually very interesting because they were doomed to fail this generation if they did not take drastic steps. But from around 2017 when they launched Game Pass, I had a sense that they were coming in with a whole different proposition, and it seemed like their play, as risky as it looked and as risky as it was more than likely going to withstand a lot of the market pressure that PlayStation had put over the years. To that effect, I get a lot of comments from people who say that I'm an Xbot or I'm a PC Xbot, or so they just come up with this weird, I don't know, it's a mishmash of their perception of me. And to that, I usually laugh and say, wow, that's quite interesting, because at the end of the day, when I actually show like exactly where I've played on and my favorite console for the longest time, it might surprise a few people. I also saw a comment here that said these new PC gamers are just former Xbots, now known as Xbox refugees, trying to spin reality in a way to make sense of the situation at hand. Xbox, the console, is going away, and PlayStation will continue on. Bet the bank on it. I'd say don't bet the bank on anything, because most of us that sit here and watch YouTube videos, we don't have a bank to bet on. So don't worry. It's just a corporation that doesn't care about any of us. We would be better off if we basically just, enjoyed our lives. If you want to engage in playing games, play games, but be very wary about this brand loyalty that you're engaging in. Because believe it or not, at one point, I was also someone who you could consider a brand loyalist. Now, I want to go ahead and actually point this out, because I think for many folk, you probably see where I've been coming from all this while. And I think this is probably why I get really annoying, in a sense, to those who may be PlayStation aficionados. In 2015, right around Black Friday, I was trying to consider what console I was going to buy. At this time, the only console I had owned was an Xbox 360. Somebody gave it to me. I never paid money for it. And it was just basically sitting there in a building that they were in charge of. And I was like, hey, you're not using this Xbox 360. What are you going to do with it? They were like, you want it? I said, sure. So I got myself the Arkham games, which I started playing on a friend's PlayStation 3 before. And I started playing on the Xbox as it was right available to me. So when I decided I was going to buy myself a console, after explaining to my wife how it would help me basically, be able to unwind, and my hobby was playing video games, and she was kind enough to say, of course, why not? I went ahead and placed an order for an Xbox One. I remember very well, I placed it on Amazon, but I'd been doing research before then. And so on further research, I was going ahead and saying, what games do I actually want to dial into? And somewhere around that evening, I remember it was late that evening, I got back home, I canceled that order, and I got myself a PlayStation 4. I got that PlayStation 4 because one of the first consoles that ever impressed me was a PlayStation 2. I remember growing up back in Africa, and I had a neighbor, really cool dude, and he had some family that, they were well off. And one day he invited me to his house, and we got to play his PlayStation 2. In fact, he didn't have any games except a few demo discs that had come with his PlayStation 2. In that demo disc was some soccer game, I think Max Payne, Crash Bandicoot, and some other titles. It was insane. Then another good friend of mine from Children's Church invited me to his house, where we got to play Resident Evil and a few other PlayStation games. Now, I'm not a Resident Evil fan, but at that time as a kid, even though I was scared, I still thought it was really cool. So there was brand loyalty and brand imprinting, which is what I call it whenever you're a kid and you get exposed to a brand that you like. I call it brand imprinting, that had already taken place with me and the Xbox. Sorry, I said the Xbox. And the PlayStation. Xbox was not even in my radar. I didn't even know what an Xbox was. The very first time I ever saw an Xbox was when I left my home country and came to the United States. I never owned one for the longest time. I remember after buying this PlayStation 4, I was playing PlayStation games. I had beaten all the PlayStation games I was, interested in, and I was more of a, FIFA soccer player, because growing up in the arcades, PlayStation consoles were actually very dominant in the arcades. That's basically what we played. So I was a PlayStation, fan. For some of you that are PlayStation fans, the way you behave like you're the first PlayStation fans in the whole wide world. If you maybe don't know, I had actually been in the fandom probably before some of you were able to actually, legally own a PlayStation and play some of the games that you played. I'm not that old. I'm still a millennial. However, it's very interesting to see how people categorize me as an Xbot. My first Xbox, I think I purchased on Facebook Buy Sell Trade. And as I plugged it in, I was like, there's just no games here for me that I want to play. The Xbox had no games. Literally, they did not. And so I sold it back. Then I bought another one thinking maybe things had changed. And then I sold it back. Never owned this console for more than like a week. It wasn't until later on as I started looking at, okay, what is the proposition right now on PlayStation? And I realized that the proposition was not really serving me. And before this particular acquisition of a console in my house, I already played on PC before. Don't get me wrong, in between all that time, had a really, interesting encounter with a family relative who introduced me to the PC platform. And I always thought PC was cool. I'd been nerding out over time for years. And so finally I looked and I said, man, maybe I need to go back to get a PC. And somewhere, somehow, I decided that I was going to go ahead and do it and pair it up with my PlayStation 4. Yo, it was night and day. There was no way I was not going to continue to expand on PC after having seen that I could play my games at better performance. I didn't have to pay to play online. This was as far back as 2016, 2017. Keep in mind, again, I bought my PlayStation 4 in 2015, around the end of 2015. So it didn't take me too long to see that as a big division player, everybody else on, PC was playing the game at 60 FPS and they didn't have to pay to play it. And I was like, nah, man, I need to start exploring this platform. And that's how I basically came back into PC. And since then, it's just basically been console on the side, PC as my primary, again, pretty much. Now, this is very interesting because many people might presume that the way I cover Xbox, because I'm just talking about their business strategy, and the way I'm very familiar with PlayStation makes me seem like, oh, I'm some kind of, according to these people, Xbot. I think what it is because of my knowledge of the ecosystem and the fact that I still own my PS5 and I still am dialed in with the technology and the ecosystem, it helps me to see the weaknesses of both platforms as a whole, so console and PC. Now, Nintendo, I don't really mess around with. That's what my kids play. But on the PlayStation side, on the Xbox side, it's very easy to see their blind spots. There's no doubt about that. However, it's intriguing to see that Xbox is basically standing up and taking the reins to compete in the gaming scene. Even though they're subverting expectations and taking routes that usually a lot of people would not expect them to take, I still think it's very interesting. And as a PC player now, primarily, it benefits me because what happens is a lot of their games start to spill over into the PC ecosystem insanely. And so I'm just sitting here in what I call a neutral platform, and I'm enjoying the benefits of the competition between PlayStation and Xbox. In fact, right now, what's crazy is how aggressive these two publishers are on the PC platform. It's almost as if they're so aggressive, most of their loyalists and aficionados almost feel like they're abandoning their own priorities. In fact, one big criticism that I had, and many of you were here when I actually laid that criticism at Xbox, was that they had pretty much continued, what the console manufacturers have been doing for a while. They'll do it once in a while, is that they'll basically let the, console gamer eat the short end of the stick. And this was obvious when they changed their Game Pass structure and showing you guys how insane this is. When you get Game Pass on PC, you actually pay less for Game Pass on PC than you do on console. It's insane. Can you imagine that? I can pay $11.99 here, whereas on console, I have to go pay more because that fee is built into it. So console is not a viable option for me at this stage. And I see a lot of people say, well, also, PC is not a viable, platform for them. But I say to that, it's just a matter of knowledge, and it's a matter of just the fact that consoles have thrived because a lot of people just don't know a lot about PC. It's not their fault. It's just because the console manufacturers are very loud, and the PC manufacturers don't necessarily have a united front in terms of how they pull their hardware. In fact, they're competing with one another. So AMD and Intel and Nvidia and AMD are all, at each other's necks. So if you're not willing to look through and do the research, it's hard to find a unifying theme that can help you enter the PC platform for as little as it will cost you to actually enter the console platform. Believe it or not. And I still see people from all sides, from the Xbox side, from the PlayStation side, continue to say that it's very, very expensive to get a gaming PC. It costs you $1,000. It costs you $2,000. Yet, this PC that I'm making this video from is a PC that I didn't even want, but I thought maybe I should, help people see and visualize what it looks like. And I built a PC for $650 that plays better than the PlayStation 5 and beats the Series X in terms of performance, functionality, and all of the above. But again, what I get usually is the elements around the internet that come out here. And instead of maybe adding to the conversation or maybe being somewhat productive and trying to figure out, okay, what could be, the underlying factor to seeing how these different platforms work and interact and what they hold as unique, selling points, we see comments like these. These PC gamers are just former Xbots, now known as Xbox refugees. My dude, is this the way that we should be talking? Should we not be having productive conversations to see how we can get the best deal or the best, services and games on the platforms that we want to play? But instead, this is what people just spend their time doing. But here's the thing. I'm going to continue to make sure that we don't let this stuff go unchecked, especially when I see that it's from a place of, in some sense, I don't know, maliciousness. That's just, people just being malicious for the most part. Just in my opinion, if you feel like your platform is the best place to play and you want to engage in these conversations, then tell us why. You don't have to basically make presumptions and insult people along the way. That's just wild. So this is what I wanted to make in this video and just talk about because, again, I'm a former pony, depending on how you want to put it. And so I never have been an Xbot. And I think, it's weird when people actually make that conclusion without any, you don't know. You could have just asked me, I think, but whatever. Thanks for watching. Peace out.